Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new or simply not yet subscribed, I'm Brittany, and definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button. This is Luna, if you don't know her. She's our little pug. So if you love scary stories and all things spooky, then you're in the right place. Today we're going to dive into some real spooky stories. The first one goes like this. So I have an attic door on the ceiling in my closet. I wouldn't be able to sleep if I had one of those. I know, like, I used to have friends that would have them, but personally for me, that or crawl spaces in your room, couldn't do it. Nope. It goes on to say pretty normal, right? Well, it freaks me out. It never used to make me feel unsettled because I never noticed it too much. For me, it was there, but wasn't exactly worth worrying about. Lately, I've heard moving around in my walls and especially above me. It may be animals, but usually they're there for at most 3 days before they're gone. But I've had this problem since September 2024. When was this posted? 3 days ago. March 10th is when this was posted. So that's a fairly long time to still be hearing these noises. I mean, maybe it is an animal that made its home there. That is possible. But anyways, it goes from scratching to moving, shuffling, and tapping. I hear things. It says, imagine a wooden crate being pushed with someone's shoulder or hand. It's not big, obvious sounds, but it's like when you drop your pen or remote over the side of the couch and you have to move it a slight bit to get it. And the tapping, it sounds like someone's fiddling with something, and they either keep dropping it or tapping it against the ground. I don't hear footsteps, thank God, but I hear weight being shifted. I'm assuming that's like a slate creaking, which if that was like a squirrel or even like raccoon or something along those lines, I don't think that you would hear that like weight being shifted. It's unnerving, and frankly, I feel like there's someone squatting or living in my attic. Everyone I've told calls me insane, but lately the only way I can sleep is staring straight at the door. I've gotten awfully good at sleeping with my eyes open. Like, that's a thing. Frogging is a legitimate thing, and it's where people either live in your house. I mean, in any case, frogging is where they're in your house somewhere. Whether it's the attic, the walls, the secret room, they basically will squat in your house, and they normally will hop, that's why it's frogging, between specific houses. Usually they don't stay super long because of fear of getting caught. They might go back to that house at a different point, but normally they only stay a few months and then they move on somewhere else. But to have somebody living with you that you have no idea is there is a very terrifying thought to me. I feel like it would be for most people. There's a movie on Netflix, I think it's Netflix, that's pretty good, and it's about frogging, but it takes a extra violent turn. One person said it wouldn't hurt to take a look. It's wild, but not unheard of. I went to a house that my friends were house sitting for. I noticed the bedroom had a bunch of deadbolts on it. Oh, wow. But also had a hole cut out on the bottom. I asked about it. Apparently, the unstable older son of the former owners got attached to the house and moved into the attic. I guess the woman living there had a husband who traveled for work, and she started to notice things going missing when he wasn't there. She woke up one night to a man standing over her bed. I could not imagine. The deadbolts all made sense. The hole is cut out for her cats to be able to get in and out. They have like things for that than just a regular hole, but okay. My old apartment had crawl space that went over all 3 apartments. Like, I could easily crawl over and get into my neighbor's place. I put a lock on that door as soon as I could. Someone else says maybe someone is frogging, and then someone else says maybe a raccoon family. They can make some strange noises because they're playful and move things around. But you wouldn't hear, like I said, you wouldn't hear a raccoon shifting their weight. Let's dive into the next one. This one is titled, I Lived in a Haunted House. When my mother was pregnant with me, she and my father bought a house in very rural East Germany. My father was disabled, so he couldn't work anymore, and my mother worked in the psychiatric hospital an hour away. So my father was always left alone in the house, and he hated it. He told my mother he'd hear voices and footsteps, things would move, the TV would change channels, and so on. My mother always thought it was because of his medications. He had heart defect, diabetes, and very strong pain medications. Since her go-to was always, no, you're just stressed and tired. Oh God. Since that was the same thing she told herself and continues to say to herself to this day. When I was born, my father was terrified to let me sleep in the attic where my room was planned to be. He made me stay in his room until his excuses wouldn't work anymore. He always said that I'd have night terrors and so on. So since my mother always did night shifts and therefore couldn't prove him wrong, the first memories I have of this house are no different. I heard the voices of men's coughing, and heavy footsteps. But I didn't have such a problem with it as my father did. I didn't think it was scary for some reason. At some point, my mother didn't have as many night shifts as she did back then, so I was moved to the room in the attic. It was way louder up there. I had the same experiences as my father. My TV would switch channels, my VHS player would act up, and the DVD player did the same. I had drapes in front of my bed, and they would move every night right next to the armchair that my mother put there. One plushie kept falling off the shelf, and I had weird dreams. A Russian soldier, two men that I could never put into a category. The men in my dreams would just be normal to me, not threatening, but just there. I was so young that I didn't know that this was a whole village for the Russian military in the GDR. And once the GDR was gone, the Russian soldiers left. And Germans would buy those houses. I have called them by the names they told me, which were Sasha, Heinrich, and Max. Sasha and Max would always tell me never to go into the woods without my neighbors. I didn't question it. Why would I? That's really strange. I was 4. And my neighbors always watched me when my father was in the hospital and my mother was at work when the kindergarten was closed. The 3 would also always say never to talk to certain neighbors, which were basically all except those who watched me regularly. Once again, why would I question that? 4 years old, nice neighbors were fine, and those 3 were always nice. At one point, my mother got behind it that I had experienced the same thing my father did. So she questioned my father and me separately. I described them, gave names, and told her how they talked and what they said. She brushed it off until we were both going to our beach. But I said, I know a shortcut. We had a hidden beach that you can't even see on Google Maps to this day, since it belongs to the military base next to our house. She didn't know. My dad didn't know. Neighbors didn't know. No one really did. But I somehow led her to it through the forest, knew where I could and couldn't stop. What could possibly be in a forest, in an area that was full of war, next to a military base of the Russians? Exactly. Landmines. Never hit any. Never saw any explode until I was 12. But we did find a lot of those that stepped on said mines. My mom asked me where I knew. I told her. Sasha told me. Now at that point, she did get suspicious and did some research. Sasha was the first officer who lived there and he had died of a heart attack. Max and Heinrich were normal people who moved there but died. Heinrich was very old, and for Max, my mother had to do more digging because she got the house from the bank. The guy that lived there before us had unalived himself, Max. I saw and heard them for years. Then it got less until it stopped when I moved into the room of my father when he died. But I always felt watched in that room from the corner his bed was. Might be paranoia. I'm 9 now and can think rationally. There is nothing here. And those footsteps, those aren't his footsteps. It's the house settling. It's a wooden house after all. Voices at 2 a.m., mind tricks. Things move, must be my ADHD. And after all, I regularly forget my own age and search for the remote that's in my hands. Fast forward a few more years, I have a friend over, and we both decided to stay in the attic to watch Harry Potter. because my old 80s TV had the DVD player. TV turns off. Must be bad wiring. Light turns on. Maybe the switch wasn't fully flipped. Sounds like Jeff. But now my VHS is running and New Gotti is playing. That thing was spooky when I was a toddler, so nothing new. So I tried to fix it when my friend suddenly got quiet and called my name while staring at the direction of the door. There's a mirror on the chimney that I covered. I spray painted it when I was a kid because mirrors are creepy. Yep. What? I swear. There is someone standing. You see things. No, I don't. That's a Russian. Very funny. German. I literally thought she was kidding because she always called me Russian as a nickname. I was the only Russian kid in our elementary school, so my head flicked to that. Look, he's staring right at us. Now I got creeped out, turned around and see nothing. You see someone? Yeah. How do you know he's Russian? Because of his uniform. You see him? Uniform? How would she see my imaginary friends? At least I thought they were imaginary friends. Sasha, go away, as a joke, a bloody joke. And then she turned to me and straight up took her things and ran down the stairs. She told me that the Russian just nodded and left. She refused to go anywhere near my attic ever again and spent the night in a tent in the backyard. How could she see my imaginary friend from when I was a toddler? At some point, my mother asked her about this, and after a long talk, she told her what she saw. So once my friend was back at her home the next day, my mother parked her car and told me that those were not imaginary friends, that she thought they were, but got convinced otherwise when she once saw my father in the hallway just staring at her years after he died. She told me she yelled at him to go away and he just left and went back into his room, which was where he died and then became my room. I still don't know what is up with that house, but let's just say that once I inherit it, it goes straight back to the bank. Because if it really was ghosts, what do the guys in the attic really want? Why are they here? Why did they stare at my friend? Why could she see Sasha and I couldn't? But if he was bad, why did he just nod and leave her alone? Every time I go up into the attic, I feel watched. Every time I'm in my room, I feel watched. I still hear those footsteps and the voices in the attic. Maybe those footsteps in my father's rooms were his thumping to get his blood flowing. But I do not want to know. I don't want to see him. I'd probably have the same reaction my mother had when she saw him. And the last one. I remember one night waking up in, I think, 1 hour past midnight. So 1 a.m. I don't know, but it was dark outside. I woke up to something, but couldn't understand what. Then a few seconds later, I heard knocking on my door. It wouldn't stop. It just kept going. I stayed in bed the whole time thinking it was just my uncle who forgot his keys. But then it stopped. My hallway is across from the front door. So I left my room and peeked around the corner, facing the door. The second door was closed. So there's no way someone knocked on the door. This scared me knowing my uncle passed away in our backyard 8 years ago. I was so shocked on what happened. I went back to my room, not expecting anything. But then the knocking happened again. This time, it really scared me. I didn't want to look. I was feeling really off-settled. Then it stopped. A few years back when I first moved down here, I went in the backyard to get a bucket for my grandmother. And I saw a black figure walking. I was so scared I couldn't move. I was frozen. I was only 9 at the time. But that's what went into my head when the knocking happened a second time. I never told anyone. I thought people would think I'm lying or just making up a story for laughs and giggles. But that night I felt true terror in my bones. A week later, my sister said she heard knocking at 3 in the morning. Having the same thought as me, she went to the door thinking it was my uncle. But she said that when she opened the door, no one was there. The knocking cut off right when she got to the door. I'm always terrified of my house. We always hear someone walking or knocking, but we never look at it as the end of the world. We just hope it was the spirit of my dead uncle who was knocking. Really curious if it is. I mean, it might be. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about all of those. If you have your own paranormal encounters and you would like to share them with me, I would love to hear them. I'm going to start sharing more encounters on my podcast, which is Supernatural Sessions. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch it right here on YouTube. And if you want to email your encounter to me, then you can email it at supernaturalsessionspodcast@gmail.com. In the meantime, make sure you like this video, hit the subscribe button, and until my next one, I love you guys. Bye.